Hello, Haley from Wicked Wicks here. Want to do something a little bit different because we do have a moderate risk today and a moderate risk tomorrow. Want to take you through some of the weather resources you might not be familiar with, or this is personally what I would recommend. So we're going to talk about weather radios at some point. We're going to talk about what you can get from your local weather field office and from the National Weather Service, and also local TV. And actually, I could just cover that now. If you do not have cable, you may be able to pick up your local TV stations over the air with like a simple $10 or $15 antenna. Don't buy into the verbiage that says you have to have some specific HD TV antenna. In fact, if you live right next door to the antenna, I mean the transmitter or whatever it's called, you probably don't even need the antenna, because the signal would be so strong. So anyway, that's one way to get live TV coverage. And you might actually be surprised how many TV stations will actually stream live over the internet when there is severe weather happening. So that's TV. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what you can get from the National Weather Service. So for instance, Omaha was the place that I picked because they're in the moderate risk area. So if you go to weather.gov, and then you type in Omaha, or you be lazy and you use your drop-down menu like I am, here is the 7-day forecast. So this is the important area, the hazardous weather conditions. So if there were a watch or a warning in effect for that area, here's where you would see it. And here's something that I think is also important for people to know about, is the hazardous weather outlook. So if you're familiar with the Storm Prediction Center, they work at a national level, whereas the hazardous weather outlook is kind of the local equivalent of that. So it gets to go into much more detail and have a much more local feel. So, for instance, day 1, today and tonight, says there's a moderate risk for severe thunderstorms, yada yada yada. But one of the important things is it actually talks about specific times. Whereas a lot of times if you're reading through the Storm Prediction Center, reading through their outlook, it will just say things like afternoon or evening, whereas this is actually breaking it down into after 6 through 4 a.m. And here's another thing I think is important to look for, is at the bottom is the spotter information statement. And it will say spotter activation will likely be needed or is not required at this time. It has different ways of saying it. So basically, if they're saying... Now, I believe that generally the spotter information statement only covers today's, so you still want to read like days 2 through 7 and read that. But I like to look at this because if they're needing spotters, then that probably means that something's going to go on. Okay, so here, back to the 7-day outlook. Here is how you find who your local weather field office is. So that's what NWS WFO is. So the link would be right here from your 7-day forecast. So we're going to click that. So here's where you find the top news of the day. Now, something that's really neat that some of the local weather offices are doing is multimedia web briefings. So you get to hear from your local National Weather Service meteorologist, and they'll break it down into here's what we're expecting. But unfortunately, not every National Weather Service office does that. So now, storm reports. If you go to Wicked Wicks, you might have noticed that we have storm reports on there. Personally, I don't collect those. And actually, nor does the Storm Prediction Center. That's where I get my information. They actually get that from places like the Omaha, Nebraska local field office. And then that gets submitted out nationally to the Storm Prediction Center. But anyway, so one thing that you can find often is submit report. So like this, for instance, goes to the eSpotter system. So that would be something you might want to look into, is getting signed up for that. And then I believe you can submit things like rainfall amounts and other things like that, but definitely severe weather, that's like hail, wind, tornadoes, obviously. And something else, not all of them tell you how to submit reports. So the other thing you'd be looking for is at the bottom, is the phone number of the National Weather Service office. Now, I'm not sure how busy... Now, one thing you might honestly want to do if you've got lots of time is call them up and say, hey, how would you prefer that I submit my storm report? Because, you know, in the midst of a major outbreak or something, they're not necessarily going to be able to, you know, give each phone call personal attention. I have no idea. It might be a call-in line. It might go to voicemail. I have no idea. Anyway, so That's your National Weather Service office. Okay, let's see. We're going to do radar. Okay, so once you're at your local, like for instance Omaha's office, there should be a link on the left side to radar. So here would be where you see radar, and of course there's apparently nothing going on right there. So we'll go over. Looks like we've got some stuff there. So this is reflectivity. So this is stuff that the radar is getting bounced back to it. So here's the important things I think are the loop. You click on loop, and why loop is important is because not all storms move in the same direction. So it's important to know where they're going, because you know, if I believe this happens like around a low pressure system, you can actually see stuff moving west. So just because, you know, I don't think tornadic thunderstorms generally move left, but I don't know, I'm not a meteorologist. But anyway, let's say it was. Let's say it was an alien tornado and it was moving left. Anyway, the point is, just because it's east of you does not mean you're out of the, you know, the danger zone. So that's why you want to familiarize yourself with stuff like the looping, so that you can actually, you know, see where it's going. Okay, so along the lines of weather radar, here is it. At least at the time that I refreshed the page, all that was active was flash floods. But this is what you'll find on wickedwix.com, is there's actually a list of different radar sites. So, you know, go through them, hit all of them, you know, find the one that you like the most, because what's important is that it's something that you understand. You know, if it's one of those radar displays, like some of the commercial weather providers do this, where they just put everything that they possibly can on the map, and it's just so overly cluttered that you can't tell what's going on. That's not a good site for you. You know, unless you actually understand what all the clutter means. Because, you know, we're talking potentially life-saving information, being able to look at it and quickly discern, here's the storm, it's coming right for me. That's very important to be able to tell quite quickly. Okay, so that's weather resources. Okay, next, weather radar. Weather radio. It's also, now look at this awesome dude and his awesome hair. He says NOAA weather radio should be as common in homes and public places as smoke detectors. No, actually, I do believe that. So, weather radio, depending on where you live, you may be able to get one. I believe they go for as cheap as $30 if you cannot find one locally. Amazon.com sells weather radios. And what you absolutely must get, and I don't know if they've got it here, but the word SAME. SAME coding, yes. Specific area message encoding. What that does is you get a list of the counties or whatever, and your county will have a specific number, and you are going to program in that specific number for your specific area message encoding thing. Anyway, so what that means is that instead of the weather radio coming on for every single event that, you know, is happening in the coverage area, it only comes on when it affects your county. Because otherwise, you know, when you get woken up at 4 o'clock in the AM because there's some flash flooding, you know, 200 miles away from you, you're going to want to hit your weather radio with a hammer. Yes. So, SAME is very important. And so there's a site, Wunderground.com, we'll call it Weather Underground. Anyway, they have links to some, I don't think it's everything, but you can get familiar with like the weather radio. These are live streams. So like you could do listen to standalone. So that would be something to look at, is listen to this and get familiar with this. Now the problem with this is they can be delayed. You know, if your internet access goes out, you're pretty much screwed. You won't be able to listen to them. And the huge thing, of course, is that this can't automatically come on and say, hey, they've just issued a severe thunderstorm warning. You know, that technology right here does not exist. So this can be a good way to get familiar with the weather radio system, but definitely you want to get your own dedicated device. So I believe that, you know, covers it. So today, moderate risk. There's going to be If you stay tuned to Wicked Wicks or whatever, there is going to be a full severe weather outlook where we'll talk about the actual probabilities. But so, moderate risk today here and moderate risk today tomorrow. So, keep yourself informed. Very important. If you have any questions, you know, I don't know, holler at me. Be sure to go to, of course, wickedwix.com, WICKEDWX. WX, by the way, is short for weather, depending on whom you talk to. Not everybody knows that, that's right. Anyway, have a fantastic day.